Okay, let's be totally honest for a second. Think about your own scrolling habits today. How many times have you double tapped a brand's post or hit like on some funny corporate meme without ever having the slightest intention of actually buying their product? If you're anything like the rest of us, the answer is a lot, right? We hand out digital approval like it's free candy. But when it comes time to actually open our wallets, we're way more guarded. And yet, the entire digital marketing industry is practically built on this idea that these little taps and clicks are building a deep, unbreakable bond between you and the brand.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to challenge that fundamental assumption head-on. Our mission is to unpack a really fascinating temporal mismatch, that giant gap between fast-paced digital metrics and the slow, deliberate process of actual psychological commitment. We're going to decode a groundbreaking 2026 study that asks a pretty dangerous question for marketers. Does social media engagement actually build brand loyalty in the short term? The answer is probably going to completely change how you view your digital interactions. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the social media illusion. Second, the 2026 emerging market study. Third, the psychology of brand trust. Fourth, the shocking short-term results. And finally, attention versus true commitment.
Let's jump right into part one, the social media illusion. We really need to confront this universal assumption that brands have basically clung to for years now. The widespread myth goes a little something like this. In the digital age, higher social media engagement immediately builds brand loyalty. The industry tends to treat these fleeting little metrics, a share here, a comment there, as micro commitments. The logic is that if a brand can just get you to engage with their content this week, they're actively depositing relationship capital into a bank account of brand equity, and they can just cash that out later. But we have to ask, is this intuitive leap actually backed by hard data? Or is it just a comforting story we tell ourselves to justify massive marketing budgets? That brings us to part two, the 2026 Emerging Market Study. To find out if this myth actually holds up, let's look at an incredibly rigorous piece of research by Shasha Tian and Jingyang Liu. What's really wild about this research is the sheer massive scale of it. Tian and Liu didn't just poll a handful of college students in a lab. No. They gathered 24 weeks of high-frequency panel data. They tracked Instagram interactions for 5 absolute giants: Nike, Samsung, Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, and Toyota. And they specifically tracked them across 5 rapidly digitalizing emerging markets: India, Brazil, Indonesia, Mexico, and South Africa. This gave them an incredibly rich data set of over 500 brand country week observations to analyze exactly how weekly engagement fluctuations impact consumer sentiment. It's just a huge, huge data set. And to establish its credibility, this research was published in the peer-reviewed journal Frontiers in Communication back in February 2026. Now, you might be wondering, why emerging markets? Well, consumer behavior there is evolving so rapidly right now. Growing middle classes are experiencing massive smartphone adoption, and their social media habits tend to be heavily entertainment-oriented. The researchers really wanted to know, does this kind of highly active, sometimes purely symbolic engagement actually translate into genuine relationship capital the way we all assume it does? All right, part 3, the psychology of brand trust. Before we reveal what the data actually showed, we need to understand the theory. Why do we assume engagement works in the first place? Well, it comes down to 2 major psychological frameworks. The first is the stimulus organism response, or SOR framework. Honestly, you can think of SOR almost like a human reflex. In the digital marketing world, the brand posts a stimulus, like, say, an awesome video on Instagram. The consumer, that's the organism, processes this stimulus cognitively and emotionally, and then this internal processing results in a response, which we're obviously hoping is an approach behavior, like developing brand loyalty. You can see how perfectly the mechanism flows here. The social media engagement acts as the stimulus. That goes right into the organism phase, which generates brand trust. That trust then cascades down into the response phase, creating brand loyalty. On paper, it is a very clean, super logical pathway. The second framework is social exchange theory, or SET. This basically suggests that human social behavior is a series of interdependent transactions. It's reciprocity. If a brand gives you highly valuable, entertaining, or useful content on social media, you feel this subtle psychological obligation to reciprocate. And how do you do that? By giving them your trust and eventually your loyalty. Both of these theories strongly suggest that high engagement should absolutely equal high loyalty. Which leads us to part 4, the shocking short-term results.
Here is where our explainer takes a major turn, guys. Because despite these rock-solid psychological frameworks, when Tian and Liu actually crunched their 24-week panel data, they found something that basically turned the marketing world on its head. The statistically significant effect of weekly social media engagement on immediate brand trust or brand loyalty was exactly 0. Literally nothing. When engagement spiked 1 week, trust didn't budge. When engagement dropped, loyalty didn't fall. The researchers tested for linear effects, they tested for nonlinear saturation, they tested for mediation. The result was always a consistent, resounding null effect. Those short-term interactions simply did not convert into measurable loyalty. Just take a look at this scatter plot straight from the study. It illustrates the point perfectly. We're looking at lagged engagement rates on the bottom axis and brand loyalty on the vertical axis. Notice the completely scattered, random dispersion of these blue data points. I mean, they look like a cloud of static on an old TV. That red fitted line is practically completely flat. There is an absolute lack of any meaningful trend or correlation here whatsoever.
And the authors put it incredibly bluntly, quote, "The empirical results reveal no statistically significant relationships among social media engagement, brand trust, and brand loyalty across all hypothesized paths." Guys, this is a massive paradigm shift. It proves that the metrics we monitor obsessively week to week, the likes, the shares, the comments, are effectively meaningless when it comes to measuring short-term relationship building.
Let's wrap this up with part 5, attention versus true commitment. We really need to resolve this mystery. If SOR and social exchange theory are real, proven psychological phenomena, why did they fail so spectacularly in this massive data set? Well, it all comes down to the critical difference between fleeting online attention and long-term psychological commitment. Look, social media metrics are incredibly noisy. They fluctuate wildly based on platform algorithms or random viral trend or just momentary boredom. But human trust? Trust is a slow-moving psychological construct. You don't suddenly trust a brand with your loyalty just because they posted a clever meme on a Tuesday. The problem isn't that the psychology theories are wrong. It's that we're trying to measure deep relational bonds on a high-frequency week-to-week stopwatch. So how do we translate all of this into actionable takeaways? First, we have got to stop confusing attention with relationship capital. Engagement metrics measure how well you captured someone's focus for 3 seconds, not how much they trust you. Second, because trust is a slow-moving construct, frameworks like SOR and SET require extended timescales. We are talking months or years, not weekly reporting cycles. And finally, especially in these emerging markets, we have to recognize that a lot of digital engagement is just symbolic entertainment. People are interacting for fun, not to declare their absolute allegiance to a corporation. You simply cannot rush genuine relationship building with algorithmic spikes. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. The data is clear. The immediate dopamine hit of a like does not buy you a customer's loyalty. So I'm going to leave you with this provocation. If short-term engagement is just an illusion of loyalty, how will you measure the true value of your digital interactions tomorrow? How are you going to shift your focus from chasing weekly algorithmic spikes to cultivating slow, genuine, durable trust in an incredibly fast-paced digital world? Definitely something to think about the next time you go to double tap a post.